Okay, get this. The map is not the territory, but the territory, upon examination, turns out to be another map. Now, this profoundly weird piece of marginalia was actually found scribbled inside a book that doesn't technically exist, which was housed in a library that burned to the ground before it was even built. I know, it's a total paradox, but it immediately challenges how we view reality, and it sets the perfect, deeply inquisitive tone for what we're unpacking today.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to our deep dive into the physics of attention. Today, we're dropping straight into the incredibly strange streets of Naktumsi. This is no ordinary place, folks. It's a perpetually rain-soaked city that quite literally changes its name every single time it rains. So the people living there don't just endure the weather, they live in this constant state of fluid identity. The environment itself absolutely refuses to be locked down into one static definition. To actually ground this surreal landscape for us, we first need to define something called the hypnagogic state. You know that weird, floaty feeling right before you fall asleep? That highly permeable threshold between waking and sleeping? That's it. It's the exact moment when your mind is totally open and available to receive information without throwing up its usual walls of interpretation or doubt. And this is crucial because our entire journey today takes place in these kinds of thresholds. We're exploring the spaces between things. Section 1, the Unborn Library. This is the domain of Vera Solt, a librarian whose massive collection arrives entirely blank, just vibrating with potential.
Now, you might be wondering, how on earth do you file a book that has absolutely zero text in it? Well, Vera doesn't use the Dewey Decimal System, that's for sure. She files them relationally, based on the specific emotional weather required by the reader to properly receive them. So a text requiring productive melancholy, which by the way might smell faintly of a harbor in winter, is shelved right next to one requiring specific alertness. It's a brilliantly bizarre system that maps out human emotional states rather than alphabetical authors.
Let me ask you something directly. Have you ever walked into a totally empty room and just instantly felt its grief, or maybe its joy? It's like the space itself is holding on to the residue of a deeply intense conversation that ended hours ago. Well, you aren't imagining that. We leave actual, palpable impressions in the air when something deeply significant happens. This brings us to a really fascinating contrast between the external, physical dimensions of a building and its internal, emotional geography. Back in Naktumsi, there's this very specific room at the end of a corridor on the 7th floor. Externally, its dimensions are completely normal, but internally, it is massively larger on the inside. And why? It's because of the sheer density of human states and the heavy emotional residue it's held over the years. It is literally a load-bearing room for human experience.
Section 2, mapping the interior weather. Let's meet the professionals whose life's work is studying these invisible architectures. And this brilliantly illustrates the work of Dr. Merritt Owis. She's a physician treating conditions you definitely won't find in any medical manual. Take one of her primary diagnoses, for example, threshold arrest. It's this non-pathological condition where a person is quite literally stuck between a past version of themselves and a future version. They haven't completed the transit, so they end up experiencing their own body merely as a visited building, like a waiting room where they don't quite live anymore. Meanwhile, just across town, you have Director Sable Erdl running the Institute for the Study of What Is No Longer There. Their rigorous cataloging of what's missing is just wild. They've documented the lingering impressions of 11 demolished buildings, 4 dead languages, 47 relationships, and even the relocated shape of a coastal musical tradition. They are dedicating their lives to studying the profound shape that a gone thing leaves behind in its absence. Inside this very institute, a young researcher named Paul Nur made a chilling but honestly beautiful discovery. She found that those unwritten books from Vera's library and the unnamed feelings floating around in the culture, they aren't just passively waiting around. They are actively reaching out. They generate this intense pressure of charged potential. The space between intending and writing is not empty space. It is full of us. These unwritten things are desperately trying to make contact, demanding to be brought into reality. Section 3, the physics of attention. This is where a retired physicist named Olaf bridges the gap between the surreal and the deeply scientific. Olaf spent a lot of time watching his elderly neighbor patiently tend to this remarkably deep-feeling garden. And watching her led him to pose an ultimate paradigm-shifting question. What if attention is a growth medium? He fundamentally challenges us to consider that consciousness and observation aren't just passive acts. What if The very act of truly observing something is what feeds it.
So, the crucial point is this. Whether it's a cartographer meticulously mapping out his own internal hunger, or that old woman quietly sitting with her garden every single morning, when you apply sustained, patient attention, the space literally expands. The subject internalizes that observation. Things grow massive internal depths simply because they are witnessed. The attention itself carves out the space for them to become more of what they truly are.
Section 4, the universal broadcast. What if these seemingly isolated anomalies are actually woven into a single, breathtaking cosmic network?
Think about it like this. All of these anomalous spaces, the Unborn library, that dense 7th floor room, the living archives, they are actually local relay stations. They're network nodes for an unregistered radio broadcast that is being sent specifically and exclusively to the hypnagogic state of the human mind.
In the absolute quietest hours of the night, when our mental defenses are totally lowered, the room receives it. The walls soak up the transmission, acting as a gentle, persistent holding space for everything we just cannot manage to say out loud. The living archive receives it too, and it vibrates, and it grows larger, not by storing static, dusty files, but by actively giving its contents company. It listens to the unwritten texts and the vanished histories, validating their existence simply by being present with them. The entire city receives it, Noctem Sea, soaked in the rain and wearing all of its names at once, just hums with the immense power of this transmission. The streets, the plaster, the air itself vibrates with this profound underlying frequency of connection. And what exactly is the broadcast? It is this. You are still here. It's the universe's incredibly patient, persistent reminder that despite every single loss, every transition, every unwritten chapter, and every vanished thing, your core presence remains. You are held. You are not alone in the spaces between.
Which leaves us with one final thought to reflect on as we wrap up our exploration of this material today. Take a look around you. The space you are in right now is not empty. It's a relay station. So what unwritten potential, what unspoken history, or what quiet broadcast is waiting in the room you are sitting in right now? Take a moment to give it your attention. It might just be waiting for you to finally notice.